After what happened in the first part, where Cinderella managed to escape her stepmother, tried on the slipper, and married the prince, the movie begins with Jack and Gus sneaking around so they don't wake up the cat, who is named Pom Pom. They run until they reach the fairy godmother, who is reading a book and saying, "Cinderella and the prince got married and lived happily ever after." That's the end.
Jack says, "Excuse me? How is that the end?" She tells him there is only one Cinderella book. Gus says, "Guys, don't make it a big deal. We'll just make a second book." Everyone is happy with the idea, but Jack says, "Wait a second. Who's the dummy that's going to read a book written by mice?" The fairy godmother tells him Cinderella is the one who will read it, and since you made it, she will love it. Jack tells her, "But we don't know how to make a book." She says, "Don't worry, everything works with magic." They bring the paper and everything they need, but the fairy godmother says, "Come on, tell us a story to write." Jack says, "Who, us? You couldn't find anyone else to ask?" Gus says, "I have an idea. What if we write about Cinderella's first day in the palace?" Jack says, "I believe you. That's a wonderful story."
He starts telling the story. The tale began when Cinderella and the prince got married, and all the mice went to the palace with her. The palace was huge and empty, and as you can see, we were very happy. But suddenly, Cinderella arrives. The Grand Duke and a woman run to wake the king, telling him the prince has arrived. Cinderella says, "I honestly can't believe myself. I'm going to live in this whole palace?" The prince tells her, "My dear, you are a princess now. Make yourself completely at home." On the other side, the king tells them that Cinderella isn't ready to be a princess yet. Someone must teach her everything. The Grand Duke says, "Is this a great honor for me, your majesty?" The king says, "Forget it. It's not you. Prudence is the one who will handle this." The king tells Prudence that the royal banquet will be Cinderella's responsibility from now on. Prudence says, "But your majesty, she knows nothing about the royal banquet." At the same time, Cinderella tells the prince, "I don't know anything about the banquet." He tells her, "Don't worry, I'll stay with you the whole time." As soon as they arrive, the king tells the prince, "Welcome back. Now get going." The prince asks, "How can I leave the princess? The party's in 2 days." The king says, "These are the laws." Prudence suggests, "Why don't I organize the party like I do every time?" The king says, "That's only if there isn't a princess in the palace, but now there is." The prince tells Cinderella, "I'm sorry, I have to leave now." She says, "Don't worry, it's just a party. What could be odd about it?" He says, "I'm sure you'll surprise us with an incredible party." Then he leaves. Cinderella enters the palace, and the atmosphere isn't very pleasant. Pom Pom goes to her and greets her. Even Bruno goes to her. Gus tells them, "Look at this big chair for the great Princess Cinderella." She says, "The palace is also very big. It's going to need a lot of work from me." Jack says, "Don't worry, we'll all help you." Later, Cinderella is in the kitchen making food for the mice. Prudence goes to her and says, "You maid, you scum of society, have you not seen your mistress, Princess Cinderella?" Cinderella says, "Is it not obvious it's me?" Prudence says, "What are these clothes? Anyway, let me introduce you to your assistants, Beatrice and Daphne." Prudence tells them they just have enough time for breakfast. Daphne says, "The main thing is that the bread is hot." Prudence gives her a look that's Surat and tells Cinderella, "A princess doesn't cook. Since you know nothing about royal customs, I will teach you everything. This is what the king asked of me." She takes her away, and the mice are very upset. They go upstairs and put her in a metal corset, saying she must wear a royal dress for dinner tonight. As they walk, Cinderella says, "The weather is so nice today. Why don't you open the curtains?" Prudence says, "These are never opened, and it's not proper for a princess to do something like that." They go to the dining table, and Daphne asks, "Choose, your majesty, a normal white tablecloth or an off-white one?" Cinderella says, "Normal is fine." Prudence says, "No, the off-white," even though there's no difference between them. They go to the kitchen, and she tells her, "For the party, as usual, we are making roasted ham and everything your heart desires." Jack and Gus say, "We're going to be full today." But Prudence says, "The most important thing is the dessert, stewed prunes."
Gus says, "I'm not eating that." Cinderella asks, "You couldn't find anything but stewed prunes?" Prudence says, "These are the king's orders, and besides, I like them." Cinderella goes to the gate, and her friends call out to her. She goes to them and says, "I missed you so much." She tells the guard, "Open the gate," but Prudence says, "No one enters the palace except high-class people. Ordinary people should go mind their business." The people leave, and Cinderella is extremely sad. Prudence takes her and teaches her how to dance their way. Cinderella tries her best, but they keep pressuring her until she falls. Prudence says, "I knew you wouldn't be good enough." Cinderella leaves them, goes to her room, and starts crying. The mice go to her and try to calm her down, but she says, "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be a princess." Jack says, "You aren't the Cinderella I know." She says, "You're right. Why should I wear these clothes? Why should the palace be dark? And what is this boring dance? Not to mention the colors they choose and why ordinary people aren't allowed in. I can forgive all that, but eating stewed prunes, that is what cannot happen." She takes off the dress, ties her hair back, and returns as the Cinderella we know. She tells them, "The party will happen, but my way." The first thing she does is open the doors, go down to the market, and distribute invitations to all the villagers. Prudence tells her, "The king won't agree, and this isn't the law." Cinderella says, "Then we must change the law a little." She returns to the kitchen and says, "We must change the food, especially the dessert." Jack says, "I love chocolate." She says, "Great idea. We'll make chocolate." She goes to the dance practice and changes the boring dance. She is perfectly happy. Prudence sees them and pulls her own hair in frustration. Cinderella changes the colors of everything and opens the curtains. Prudence tells her, "You will be responsible for all of this," and leaves. Cinderella gets dressed and everyone arrives at the party. The social classes mix, but everyone is happy, except for Prudence. The mice take the food they want. The king arrives and is surprised by the people. Daphne gets clumsy with the chocolate and accidentally spills it on the king. The king yells, "What is happening here? And who opened the curtains?" Prudence says, "Cinderella did all of this. I told her, 'Girl, it's not right. The king will kill us all.' But she wouldn't listen, and she punched me in the stomach." The king says, "But honestly, the moon looks very beautiful." He tastes the chocolate and loves it. He asks, "Why did you stop? Play the music." Everyone dances, and the prince arrives and is very happy with the party. The king says, "Well done, Prudence. The party is amazing." She says, "Thank the princess. She did everything." The mice eat and dance, and Cinderella and the prince sit on the throne. He tells her, "You know, the thing I love most about you is that you are yourself." Thus, the first chapter of the book is finished. Of course, you forgot the book and the fairy godmother and all that. Jack is struggling to open a bottle, so the fairy godmother helps him with magic. He says, "Enough with the magic already." Gus says, "Remember what happened because of magic? How about we write that story?" Jack says, "No, that's a boring story." But a female mouse says, "But I like it." So he says, "Fine, it goes in this time." The story begins. One day, Jack and Gus were walking in the grass. Gus says, "Man, why are we out here in the heat of the sun?" Jack says, "We are going to get flowers for Cinderella." Gus says, "Is she lacking flowers?" Jack says, "Son, we don't help her with anything like before." Gus says, "She's not waiting for our help. She has many servants." Jack says, "Just collect the flowers and be quiet." Pom-Pom sees them and runs down. She sneaks up on them. Jack sees her and runs away, heading to Cinderella. Before he reaches her, he sees the Grand Duke asking her, "What do you think of the flowers?" She says, "They are very beautiful." Jack sees this and gets very sad. Cinderella notices him and asks, "What are these flowers, Jack?" He says, "They're for you, but they're a bit small." She says, "These are the most beautiful thing I've received. Thank you, Jack." The Grand Duke calls her, saying the committee is waiting downstairs, so she leaves. Then Mary, the mouse, goes to Jack and says, "See what I made for you?" showing that she likes him. He says, "It's very beautiful." But before he can wear it, Gus says, "Jack, Cinderella forgot the party paper." Jack leaves Mary and takes the paper to give to her. He runs to the table where a woman's handkerchief falls on him. She reaches down to get it. There's some noise and breaking, and Jack leaves and sits sadly. Cinderella goes to him and asks, "Are you okay?" He says, "I tried to help as much as I could, but every time I fail." She says, "Don't upset yourself. I'm going to the celebration grounds and I need someone to help me. Why don't you come?" He says, "Of course I'm coming." She says, "Meet me in the stable in 10 minutes.
Because he is a mouse, he reaches the stable with great difficulty. He climbs on top of the carriage so Cinderella can see him, but a man grabs Jack with the hay and sets him aside. Cinderella arrives and calls for him, and he calls for her, but they can't hear each other. She says, "I guess he couldn't come," and leaves. He tries to catch her, but fails. He sits by the fountain and says, "In the past, I used to help her and she'd be happy, but now I can't help because I'm too small. Even the flowers are bigger than me."
Pom-Pom sees him and approaches, but the fairy godmother appears, and the cat runs away. She asks, "What's the problem, Jack?" He says, "Ma'am, get off the flower first. My problem is that I'm a small mouse and I want to be a human." She says, "But you helped Cinderella your whole life as a mouse." He says, "That was in the past." She says, "If that's how you feel, I'll grant your wish." She casts a spell, and Jack turns into a human. Pom-Pom sees this, but isn't scared. She thinks he's just a giant mouse now. Jack, now human, is very happy. He sees Cinderella from afar. He goes to her, but a bucket falls on him. The Grand Duke asks, "Are you okay?" Jack says, "I am Jack," but before he can finish, the Grand Duke says, "Your name is Sir Enzo?" Cinderella says, "Wait, let me help you." He says, "No, I came to help you." She says, "Ah, the committee sent you to help with the spring festival." They ride a horse and it takes off. By the time they arrive, he is disheveled. He gives her the flowers and they return to the palace. The Grand Duke says, "Everything is falling apart and waiting for you." Cinderella tells Jack, "Can you put these flowers in a vase? I'll be right back." Pom-Pom starts chasing him. He thinks, "Why am I running? I should stand up and hit her." But he sees a small hole and tries to hide in it, but he doesn't fit because he's human. He grabs something to hit her, but Cinderella says, "Bravo, you found a vase. Go sit with the party organizer until I return." He goes to her, but he hears her screaming, "Mouse," as she chases Gus and the others. When he enters, she drops the broom and says, "You are the man of my dreams." He tells her, "Lady, go find someone else." Cinderella walks in and says, "Great, we found the first 2 people who will dance at the party." He hears the voices of the mice who are worried about him. He says, "I'm right here," but they are terrified and run away from him. The Grand Duke tells him, "The princess is waiting for you." Jack says his catchphrase, and Mary realizes it's him. Night comes, and the spring festival begins. Everyone is happy. The king sees an elephant and decides to ride it. Cinderella introduces Jack as Sir Enzo, saying everything was his idea. He's about to tell her he is Jack, but Prudence interrupts. Pom-Pom attacks him and he falls into the water. He runs away and gets on a swing, but the cat is sitting next to him. He falls off the swing and lands on the elephant the king is riding. The elephant panics and starts breaking everything. Jack says, "This is all because of me. I wish the fairy godmother was here." She appears and says, "This is your chance to help." He asks, "What can I do?" She asks, "What can stop an elephant?" He asks, "What?" She says, "Maybe a nose." He says, "What are we waiting for? Change me back." He stands in front of the elephant, she turns him back into a mouse, and the elephant stops at the last second. Jack is very happy to be a mouse again. He wears the jacket Mary made him. Mary tells him he is a hero, and Cinderella says, "You saved everyone. You are the only one I truly depend on." Thus, the second chapter is finished. One of the mice is playing with magic and making a mess. Mary asks, "Does this mess remind you of anything?" Jack says, "Yes. Remember when Anastasia made a mess?" The fairy godmother says, "That stepdaughter knows how to love?" The mice tell the story. One day,
Anastasia was looking at a Cinderella and Prince doll, but her sister Drizella fights with her, saying, "This is mine." They pull it until it tears. Their mother enters and says, "Focus. Cinderella's party is tomorrow. This is your last chance to get husbands so I can marry you off this year. And they must be wealthy and from a big family."
Cinderella sneaks out of the palace, and the mice see her. Jack asks, "Where are you going dressed like that?" She says, "I'm going to the market to get flowers for the prince as a surprise." She takes them with her. The stepmother and her daughters are also at the market. Anastasia hears a flower seller saying, "If your lover wears this heart, you'll stay together forever." He looks at Anastasia and asks, "Do you want a heart?" She says, "Who, me?" and keeps walking. She smells something delicious and follows it until she reaches a baker. He smiles at her, and she tries to smile back. Cinderella and the mice see them from afar. The mice say, "We can't believe what we're seeing." The baker offers her something, but her mother comes and stops her, saying, "Everything here is too local, common. Let's leave." Anastasia is sad and leaves. Cinderella says, "Did you see the baker? I know that look." Jack says he probably felt disgusted, and they laugh. But Cinderella says, "They love each other." Jack says, "Anastasia? Love? Impossible." She says, "Anyone can love." She comes up with a plan to help them meet. Birds take Anastasia's hat, and the mice annoy the baker so he runs after them. They run into Lucifer. The birds drop the hat in front of the baker, and they finally meet. But Lucifer and the mice annoy the horse, and it kicks Anastasia into the shop. The baker asks, "Are you okay?" She cries and leaves. Cinderella goes to her. Anastasia asks, "What are you doing here in those maid clothes?" Cinderella tells her, "Don't worry, I saw everything. Why don't you come to the palace, change, and meet him again?" Even after everything they did to her, she still wants to help them. Anastasia says, "My mother told me not to meet this farmer again." Cinderella says, "Just come." They go to the palace. Lucifer follows them, but Snooly seizes in place because he sees Pom-Pom. He smiles at her, but she ignores him. Jack gets an idea. He takes Pom-Pom's bow and goes to Lucifer, saying, "Look, man, it seems you love Pom-Pom, right?" Lucifer agrees. Jack says, "We'll help you, but you have to stop chasing us." Lucifer agrees. Cinderella tries to fix Anastasia's appearance. She tries to teach her to be kind and to smile, but it's hard. Anastasia asks, "What if my mom sees me?" Cinderella says, "Forget your mom and do what you want." They agree to meet the next day at 12. The next day, Anastasia tells her mother she's going to the market for bread. The baker is buying a heart-shaped flower, and Anastasia gets one too. Cinderella waits at the street corner. Anastasia sees the baker standing with another woman and assumes they are together. She cries and runs away. In the meantime, Lucifer tries to talk to Pom-Pom. The mice push him. He gives her a fish, but she sees the mice and tells him to catch them. He chooses to betray the mice and chases them. Jack splashes water on Pom-Pom, and she blames Lucifer, hitting him with the bouquet. Jack tells him, "Our deal is over," and hits him with a broom. The baker looks for Anastasia everywhere and sits sadly by the fountain. A goat eats his flowers, leaving only one. He hears someone crying and finds Anastasia. He grabs her hand and says, "Wait." Her mother arrives and says, "Didn't I tell you not to talk to this insect again?" She throws the flower on the ground and tries to take Anastasia away. But Anastasia stands up for herself and says, "This time, no. I love him because he is kind, and he and I are going to the party together." Her mother leaves. The baker picks up the flower and gives it to her. Cinderella sees everything. They go to the party together, and Anastasia thanks Cinderella. The third and final chapter is finished. Jack looks at a picture of Pom-Pom and says something is missing. He puts her bow back in the picture. They finish the book. They see Cinderella passing by and run to her. They slip on the stairs but give her the book. Jack says, "We made this for you and wrote everything that happened with us in the palace." She says, "This is a wonderful idea. Let's read it together." They sit by the fireplace and Cinderella starts reading.
And that is how the mice were able to help Cinderella.